Did you know that the Kidney Dietitian now offers private kidney stone dietitian appointments? Yes, I am so excited that we now have private client packages for people to work with a kidney stone dietitian. If you've been around me for a while, you know that kidney stone dietitians are difficult, if not impossible, to find. Most dietitians have no training in personalized stone prevention, and my mission is to improve the nutrition care of everyone with kidney stones. I'm just one person. I obviously can't do that myself, so I needed a team of dietitians to help me. This is why I am thrilled to finally offer private one-to-one appointments with Kidney Stone certified dietitians. To get started, head to www.thekidneydietitian.org/clients and book a free call with one of our Kidney Stone certified dietitians to get to know them, see if you're a good fit, and understand a little bit more about how we can help you prevent kidney stones and address all of your health concerns and goals. Again, to get started, head to thekidneydietitian.org/clients and book that free call. We can't wait for you to get crystal clear on exactly what you can do to prevent stones in an effective, doable, and delicious way. Welcome to the Eat Away Kidney Stones podcast. I'm your host, registered dietitian and kidney stone expert, Melanie Betts. After learning a ton about kidney stones and helping people prevent stones at the University of Chicago, I was fed up with all the terrible advice people were finding online. So I decided to do something about it. The Kidney Dietitian was born. This podcast is for people who want to learn what actually works to prevent kidney stones and still enjoy life, eating, and their favorite foods. Let's dive in. Hello and welcome to the 68th episode of the Eat Away Kidney Stones podcast. I'm your host, registered dietitian and kidney stone expert, Melanie Betts, and today we have a question from a listener about high urine calcium and brushite, so let's listen in.
Hi Melanie, this is Lisa. I just have high urine calcium and high brushite, and I was wondering if you can tell me what I should be doing to bring those levels down.
Hi, Lisa. Thank you so much for that wonderful question. A lot of people have this question, so I wanted to really make sure that we tackled it on the podcast, which is what do we do with high urine calcium, and what do we do when we see certain values out of whack on that 24-hour urine test? Because if you've been with me a while, you know how important that 24-hour urine test is for coming up with a kidney stone prevention plan that actually works for you. So before I dive into high urine calcium and brushite and what all that means, I wanted to talk a little bit, or give a little bit of caution when we are looking at that urine test and when we're interpreting those results. So what is crucial to know when we are looking at your 24-hour urine collection data is that there is no official normal range for any of the parameters on that urine test. Each lab that you get your urine test through is going to have potentially dramatically different normal ranges for every single thing that they measure on that urine test. You know, they measure, I don't know, like 20 things or so. So just know that just because something says, when your lab comes back and it says normal, that very, very well may not be ideal for you. I feel like the best example here is even on Litholink, which is definitely my preferred 24-hour urine test company. They say that a normal urine sodium is, and don't quote me on this, I don't know the exact numbers, but it's up to 150 or maybe even 200 milliequivalents of sodium per day. So that is normal, meaning that urine sodium can come back as, say, 200 milliequivalents of sodium per day, and that is normal, meaning that it is like an average. I think maybe that is where those numbers come from, now that I think about it. It's kind of like the average results that come back from the general population. However, that does not mean that it is ideal, because if you know, and if you've taken kidney stone nutrition school, you know that urine sodium is a very, very good indicator of how much sodium you're eating, and so it's pretty much direct. If you eat more salt or eat less salt, that's going to directly change the amount of salt in your urine. And so that we use that as sort of a surrogate or a marker of how much sodium you're eating. So if your urine sodium comes back as 200 milliequivalents per liter, that's typically the unit of measure that urine tests use. That's equivalent to literally twice the amount of sodium that you should be eating. I think I wanted to call out sodium specifically because I think this is one of the most common things. People say, oh, I'm not eating too much salt. My urine sodium came back in the normal range. Well, sure, you're eating an average amount of sodium, maybe when we look at all the people that are taking 24-hour urine tests, but that is definitely not ideal when it comes to kidney stone prevention or general health. So I really want to say, if you see your urine test, like Lisa's question said, she noticed just 2 things out of range, meaning that calcium and brushite, and I promise we'll get to that. Just know that there could be a very different goal that you should be targeting, and it could be very different than what that normal range is on that 24-hour urine test. Another point to kind of really drive this home is that you could have a completely normal 24-hour urine test and you're still making kidney stones. So that to me says that if your urine test is normal, there is something on there that we've got to improve. Clearly, if you're making stones, that 24-hour urine test isn't normal for you, and we've got to do something to make it better, right? And that could be just sort of looking at it as a whole. So, people who are very familiar with urine tests and understanding how to interpret them, you're going to be looking at all of these numbers in context, right? We're going to be looking at these numbers not just individually, but kind of looking at them, like interpreting them together, if that makes sense, right? There's a lot of nuances when it comes to interpreting these urine tests, which is why it is so, so critical to work with someone who really knows what they're doing when you are trying to come up with any sort of kidney stone prevention plan, especially taking any sort of medication or making any dietary changes. You really need to make sure that your dietitian and or doctor understands how to interpret these tests, because it really is a lot of gray. There's a lot of nuance. So, in addition to those normal ranges being very different based on labs, and maybe they're not ideal ranges, they are just kind of normal ranges. There could be, say a urine calcium of say 200 is with it for most labs that says that it's normal, or we'll go with 175. Typically that's normal. But if you are a super tiny person, perhaps that 175 is too high for you, right? And maybe if you are still making stones, that could definitely be something that I would target to help you get down. So I say all of this just to be careful to not look at this test yourself and to say, all right, like this is what's high, this is what I got to do about it. I'd really be careful that we are making sure that we're looking at the whole picture when we really know all of the things that we could potentially improve on that urine test, and to definitely take the normal range with a grain of salt, if you will, when we are looking at things that need to be improved. So getting more directly to Lisa's question, I just wanted to give that disclaimer, because I get that these questions a lot say, oh, my urine test came back normal, there's nothing that I can do. Well, no, if you're making stones, there are things that we can do. We just need to make sure that we're looking at that test as a whole, working with someone who really knows what they're doing, and also looking at that test in the context of your whole diet, right? Like, we eat differently every day, obviously. Most of us eat something different every day. And so when you work with a dietitian and can really interpret that test in the context of your whole diet, we're really going to get a much bigger picture of what's going on and what dietary changes might make the most sense for you. So, all right, so going back to that high calcium question. So high calcium is very, very, very common for stone formers. It's actually by far the biggest sort of driver of stones. It's the most common thing that's wrong in someone's urine that is causing stones for them. So I actually have a whole podcast episode about exactly how to get 24-hour urine calcium down. If you go back to episode 41, it's titled The Crux of Getting Calcium Down and Preventing Kidney Stones. So definitely check that out, because I go into a lot more detail about the specific dietary changes that you should focus on to help get that urine calcium down. But in a nutshell, the biggest tool in my dietitian toolbox that I have to help you get that urine calcium down is definitely dietary sodium. The less salt you eat, the lower your urine calcium is going to be generally. So typically we recommend people to aim for no more than 2,300 milligrams of sodium per day. The other 2 things that can impact that urine calcium, not as much as sodium, but can definitely have an impact, is non-dairy animal protein. So when we eat a lot of meat, poultry, fish, seafood, those types of foods, that can definitely drive our urine calcium up. And so typically we want to make sure that we're not eating too much of that. And I have previous episodes, and I'll link in the show notes to a really great blog post that I have on exactly how much protein you should be eating. Disclaimer, there's a lot of nuance there too, because it's going to be very different based on your body size, your medical history, and all sorts of things. But just know that in general, if you're eating too much non-dairy animal protein, that can definitely send that urine calcium up. up. And the other big thing that I think about is too much added sugar, because we know people who eat a lot of added sugar, especially from sugary drinks. So things like maybe sugary coffee drinks or soda or lemonade or punch or Kool-Aid or something like that. That tends to drive urine calcium up as well. So those are, in a nutshell, the biggest things that I think about nutritionally to help get that urine calcium down, which is not too much salt, not too much meat, and not too much added sugar. One small caveat would be potentially taking calcium supplements. If you are, we talk a lot about how important it is to get calcium from food for oxalate stone prevention. But when we are taking a lot of calcium supplements, this can also drive our urine calcium up. So that's a bit more nuanced, but something to consider if you are seeing those super high urine calcium ranges. All right, so Lisa, the next thing that you asked about is what is brushite? So brushite is basically, it's a specific type of calcium phosphate stone. It really doesn't matter for the purposes of prevention and nutrition, and certainly for your understanding of kind of what's going on. Brushite is just a very specific type of calcium phosphate stone. And when you see high brushite on your 24-hour urine test, that chances are, without looking at your test, there could be some different things, but chances are that is just kind of a measurement of how likely you are to form that specific type of stone, how likely you are to form that brushite type stone, which again is just essentially a calcium phosphate stone. And so it's not surprising at all to hear that you have that high urine calcium, because that is really what's driving up that brushite value on your urine test. If you look at a litho-link 24-hour urine test, you're going to see supersaturation numbers for calcium oxalate, calcium phosphate, and uric acid stones. And different labs do it differently, but typically most of them are going to have some sort of term. You might see supersaturation, you might see relative saturation, you might see brushite, or some more specific words like that. Generally, those are just fancy calculations that are taking all of the other data in that urine test. It's looking at your volume and your oxalate and your calcium and your citrate and your uric acid and your potassium, magnesium, right? They're looking at all of those numbers and putting it into a very fancy calculation to basically say, hey, this is the risk that you are going to form this type of stone. And so the facts, Lisa, that you said that you had high brushite, to me says that is what whatever lab that you used, that lab is saying, hey, you're at greatest risk of brushite stones, which is good to know. But what we really need to know is, why is that brushite high? And it sounds like for you it's high urine calcium, and my hunch is that there's likely something else in that urine test that is driving up that brushite stone number on your printout, that we could probably target with nutrition to help improve it. So hopefully that helps you understand a little bit more about how to look at that urine test and how to understand it. Of course, if you want my help to help you really figure out all the details, exactly how to look at that urine test, exactly which dietary changes you can make and how to make them, you can work with me and my other dietitians at the Kidney Dietitian. This is what we do. This is exactly why I do what I do, is to help people put together these personalized stone prevention plans based on your specific risk factors. Because if you've been with me for more than 5 minutes, you know that there's no one kidney stone diet, and the right prevention strategy is very different for each and every person. And it's also very different even if you had the same type of stone. People will come to me all the time and say, hey, I have calcium phosphate stones, what should I eat? Or hey, I have calcium oxalate stones, like what should I eat? My answer is, I have absolutely no idea what you can do to prevent stones until I know what's going on in your urine, until I know what's really driving your stone formation. Because calcium phosphate stones, for example, could be driven for one person by low citrate. They could be driven for another person by high urine calcium. And there could be, any number of combinations of things, and prevention for each of those people is going to be very different. So if you want to work with me, you know that I always have Kidney Stone Nutrition School, which is my online course to help you walk through that urine test and know exactly what changes you can make. And I also have dietitians available who are trained and certified in Kidney Stone Nutrition to help you put together a personalized prevention plan for you. So I will put the link to both of those options in the show notes. And with that, I will close this episode of the Eat Away Kidney Stones podcast. Thank you, Lisa, so much for your question. As I always say, I love getting listener questions. If you have a question that you would like to get answered, or a chance to get answered on the Eat Away Kidney Stones podcast, you can head to kidneystonepodcast.com and record your question. I would love to hear from you and help me shape the content and the types of questions that I answer on the podcast. So thank you so much, and I will catch you next week. Thank you for listening to today's episode. For more help with kidney stones, check out my website, www.thekidneydietitian.org. For more personalized help from me, check out my online course, Kidney Stone Nutrition School. VIP enrollment includes help directly from me. I can't wait to see you there and help you prevent kidney stones. Have a great day.